Greetings, viewers, and welcome to my channel. This is our ninth session, and today we have a distinguished guest, Reverend Dr. John Krysko, and I thank him for accepting our invitation. For your convenience, links to the previous sessions appear in the description of this video. Now let's start with the new session.
Welcome, John. So the first order of the day um, is for you to introduce yourself, just a few minutes of your background.
I will give you the short version, slightly longer than the elevator version. I'm a child of God, loved unconditionally. Wherever God is, I am. Wherever I am, God is. I grew up in a Christian background. My mother was Irish Catholic. My father was born into a Ukrainian Catholic, Eastern European background that became Russian Orthodox. So I married a woman who was Episcopal, and I got ordained as an interfaith minister in 1905. No, not quite that long ago, in 1981. So my interest has always been in college, what is the highest possible way for human beings to actualize themselves? I studied in college religion, philosophy, and psychology, and I compared the Eastern humanist psychological perspective with the more Eastern mystical, Middle Eastern, certainly Far Eastern Hindu and Buddhism, and found that there were things in common and things that haven't yet together come together, and so as an understanding. So my life has been about bridging different faiths, different philosophies, different traditions, recognizing there is only one universal truth, God. And so that's what it has been. And I have been involved with interfaith from doing ecumenical luncheons in Pleasantville, New York for 13 years with churches and synagogues. The mosque wasn't there yet at the time. And as well as being on the board of the Interfaith Center of New York for 19 years, which grew out of the Cathedral of St. John, whose particular focus on interfaith was on social justice. And the idea that by working with community faith leaders in their communities together, we could have a more just and loving and therefore peaceful world, and very actionable. And there's still Interfaith Center is still going on, and all the faiths were very, very much engaged in that. And then that was in New York City. Locally in Pleasantville, I was engaged in various things, and I've been part of the Neighborhood Interfaith Conversations group for over 11 years, and that grew up out of the work of Christians, Jewish, and Muslims to try and find not just common ground, but to learn from each other through dialogue and communication. And that has led to an enormous challenge, which requires a next step past conversation into actionable. I mean, if the group is survived, if we as a planet are going to survive, is how do we take these conversations and understand into practical outer expression? It's not that it's no longer appropriate to have a dialogue, but it's not enough for these times, and that's given the challenges that we have. So that's an introduction of myself. I'm working on some books right now. One of them is called Mother of Us All, about the divine feminine in the Abrahamic religions as well as in the Eastern religions, and the importance of the voice, the imperative, the absolute critical aspects of having the divine feminine included in the conversation. So that's where I am.
Very impressive, John. I'm so we are honored to have you. And the purpose today is, I don't know how much of a chance you've had to see my earlier recordings of this session. But the purpose today is to get your views on it. And I just want to summarize what I've been trying to say and then ask you for your thoughts on it. For a long time, for about 10, 15 years, I've been thinking about that there is a battle going on between the powerful and the powerless. And I've been thinking and maturing, is sort of coming to some form of finality, and I see it applying to the world in general. And I basically said that in this battle, the powerful are just too powerful, and they are abusing their power. And this is leading to an unfair and unjust world. But I'm not just expressing that as an opinion. I put forward about 5 different symptoms which I see. And I will just, in 1 minute, try to summarize them. Number 1 is that we live in a world where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And number 2, that the actions of mostly the powerful are leading to a deterioration in the environment, which we now call global warming. And that is getting worse and worse, and it seems unstoppable. Number 3 is that democracy seems to have become a victim of capitalism, and the role of money and is eating away at the original idea of democracy. And so we have democracy is failing. And number 4, because of social media and the advent of artificial intelligence, we now have fake news and too much news, and people don't know what to trust and what is accurate and what is wrong and what is propaganda. And number 5, there's a huge refugee problem where, people are on the go, leaving their homes, not for economic reasons, but because their homes have been devastated. And there are millions of people, some of them massed on the southern border of the United States, some of them in ports outside of Europe, some of them have found safe havens in Pakistan or Turkey or Jordan, and living in tents, and humanity in millions is suffering, and mostly women and children. And I can go on. I mean, these are the 5 things. The 6th one is, the indebtedness of the poor countries. And everything that is happening is further making the poor poorer and the rich richer. So am I being an alarmist, John?
No, you're being way too, I think you're understating the case by tenfold. But the issue is, what is the issue? And the issue to me is much bigger than that in a way. Let me give you my take on it. It certainly is.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
What you are stressing, as in a prophetic voice, in a certain way, the urgency of the matter.
Right.
And the urgency of the matter is through at least all 5 things. I mean, if I had to number 6, indebtedness, the lack of balance and justice in the world is just overwhelming.
Right.
And so the biggest issue for me, as we have forgotten, for me, the most important thing of which any faith leader has, certainly the Abrahamic faiths have a very common ground on this, is simply God. Allah, Jehovah, God, is when God is not part of the equation, when it's not on the outer rim of the circle and not at the center point, there's no, what happens is, without God, there is no connecting point between the hub and the wheel. It's like, how can you have a wheel like, the old wagon wheel without, the spokes. I mean, God is all things, but without a God presence, then you just have this ever expanding what problems and no way to get to the center. And when you're in the center, there's no way to get to that. We need to have God in the equation. We need, without God in the discussion, all this is meaningless, because then we're simply, stating, rather, and there's nothing wrong with stating the obvious, but we have no real solution unless we bring God into the conversation. And it's ironic at an exponential level when all the discussions on interfaith and the problems of the world don't seem to invite in the divine. I just like, it's a head scratcher. None of the prophets would have, it would not have been possible for them to have a discussion without having the most central aspects of the divine. And when we are not in alignment with the divine, in whatever the three slight, and they are very slight variations in the Abrahamic, they're not like vastly different, just emphasizing slightly different elements of it. I mean, there's no justice without love, no love without guidelines and laws to do that. So, but without the divine, we're hopeless. There's no way to get there from here in that old joke.
But John, now here's the problem, that the powerful, at least, and even the powerless, have taken God out of their affairs.
Yes.
And you are saying what I'm saying, that is the solution. But we have a problem. And if nobody else believes in that solution, they are not going to reach out to God.
No, well, right. No. So how do we bring, it's a very real and appropriate question to ask, is how do we bring God back into the equation? Now, I'm going to go back to my Christian one for a moment. I will bring in all three, hopefully, during this, is the last temptation of Jesus during that time in the desert, after he has an experience of the divine, and he goes into the desert for 40 days to take all of this in. And the very last temptation is Satan, the tempter, the deceiver, takes him up and says, look, to this high place, a mountain, and says, look, all this, just bow down to me and all the problems go away. And, if Jesus had taken, I once wrote a story, I just started to, but it's too scared for me to finish. Is Jesus goes, okay, that way there would have been harmony in the world, there wouldn't have been wars, but we would not have grown to be the God who we could be, because we'd always be under the boot, under the heel of Satan. And the ultimate temptation is giving into the most obvious thing, that, well, the things of the world and what rule the world, that the powerful rule. We have all, and it's a hard, it's the only war there ever has been against God. Because if we're at war with God, then we have to be at war with each other. That's the primary denial of the supreme, which is what the rulers of the world want us to believe, that they're in charge. But it's the greatest illusion there is. And social media, number 4, and number 3, and why democracy is being a victim, is we are giving into the illusion that the powerful have power, and democracy is crumbling because we're agreeing with that. And social media is exacerbating that and spreading the lie of the great deceiver. This is a time of that great deceiver seeking to have dominion on the earth once again. Every 1,000 years, give or take, it comes back and tests us sorely. Who's really in charge right now? According to the God. I grew up in somewhat of a tradition, not a tradition, but a Christian background. These far right, they get aligned with Zionists, say, end time. But they're being an agency of the very thing that they're not even aware of it. I hope, but the fake news is all about saying, don't trust your spiritual traditions. Don't trust the God-given morality that each of us has embedded in there. Don't trust that there is a God. There is no God. Look around. There's no God. There's war. There's problems. Like the biggest challenge of the Antichrist will come when it says, hey, enough of the chaos. believe in me, just follow this artificial intelligence program. We're going to end all problems, but God is no longer a part of it. So how do we bring back the divine into the conversation? Because, the divine goes, there's no way that God wants what people that have accumulated money to have power more than the others. There's no way in any of our traditions that says that. But how the biggest challenge is how to do it. But it's not a question of if, because if we don't bring the divine into the conversation, then the environment will reflect it, our democracies, our relationships, everything is falling down because we're not guided by. No, but each of the three traditions have a very strong moral code. The Hebrews, the Jews have the Ten Commandments as a moral code. I mean, I'm not an expert on the Quran, but I know embedded in it are not only spiritual teachings, but moral teachings about how we treat each other, how we treat women, the environment. I mean, it's absolutely embedded in that. The question is, the people who are in charge ignore that. They act as if that were and so, and that's true. Honestly, I could easily, I won't point to it's not appropriate for me to point to Muslim countries about how they are doing or not doing with women in the world and the environment. But I could say without a doubt that in Christian countries, and I could certainly, you don't have to be a prophet to look at Israel and say, how on earth are you living, with the morality that your religion teaches when you're doing the very things that you have long and perhaps justly complained have done against you? How do you possibly justify having a democracy that is doing the exact opposite of what your religion teaches? How do you, an outside person can't do that. I can, as a Christian, do that. I can see that there are some cracks in the Netanyahu-controlled system, that the protests that are going on inside Israel and Jerusalem and Tel Aviv are saying enough already. I don't want to make fun of Jewishness and say enough already, but they are saying it. People from the inside say this is not tolerable anymore. This is beyond. It has to happen at least at one level. It has to happen inside each country. And outside, I can't tell a Muslim country, I am not a Muslim. I am a child of God, and as such, I could weigh in, but I'm not. It has to be from the inside. And Christian countries absolutely have to take a stand against supporting. I mean, that there's a conversation in this country about how many bombs, and if I mean, I'm not trying to go against Biden here exactly, but it's hard to not say, well, we're not going to give you all the bombs you need, or we're only going to give you the bombs you need if you do. How do you possibly justify that as a country? I can't justify. I'm writing to the Congress. There's no justification to support the military oppression and genocide that's going on. But that has to be, I mean, the nice part about America, nice is not, is that all people, whether you're Christian or not, because it's not a Christian country, although it's has a strong we have a right and a responsibility to say this is wrong. We can't support whether they call themselves a democracy or not, we can't support Israel in this action. And that's what we have to do. And as Christians, we have to go to our faith leaders and say, we have to take a stand on social justice side to say this is not like get kind of a little bit off here, it's relativistically not right. We have to take a stand that this is absolutely wrong. In the same way that we should have taken against Hitler, we have to take a stand in that way. And we have
So,
to.
John, 2 points. Number one, I have avoided bringing in religion into this, but I have not avoided bringing God into this. So,
That's a good.
and in one of my sessions, I have said that we will constantly talk about God, but this is not a Muslim forum, it's not a Christian forum, it's not a forum for any. This is, God is the creator. So I'm not going to rely on any of the texts, or the Quran or the Bible or anything like that. So that's one point. The second point is that it's not going to happen. The powerful are so addicted to power. Once you have an addiction, you can't you can't talk sense to people. They will always have an argument. So the powerful, you and I or any other person, will not be able to convert. The powerful are done. This is my view. They will crumble under their own weight, whether in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years, I don't know. But uh, our solution is not to preach to the powerful, because they're not going to listen.
I agree.
Maybe, and I don't even know whether the powerless will listen, maybe. All we're going to say to the powerless is not rise up. No, we're going to say what you're saying. Turn to God. You don't have the power to confront the powerful. You'll be crushed. So all you have is to be set an example of morality, set an example of justice. You are in the majority. This is the tragedy. The powerless are in the majority by far. There are a few thousand people controlling the world today. This is my thesis. And they are, we call, whether you call it the deep state or whatever it is, Biden is not in charge. Trump will not be in charge. It's the money behind them. It's whatever the deep state is, they are the ones.
Well, there's an old expression that is, I think, important here. It's a question of opening up the hearts, opening up the eyes. God will not be mocked. The powerful have always thought that they're in charge, right. But historically, they crumble. It's just the way it is, and it lasts for a time and a half, but not forever. The issue of having their hearts opened up, it's okay. I just finished watching on Netflix. It's actually very good. I would recommend it. It's called Testament: and it's the life of Moses. And they have, it's a very good story, and it's very well done. 3 parts, hour and a half each. And they have a Muslim, Christian, and Jewish scholars that will periodically come in, and Musa, or the Muslims, they bring it into the context and how it's interpreted. I think it's brilliantly done, and it goes to the point of what you're saying is there's always been Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the leader that thinks they're the powerful. It's the ultimate historic, and it's now there's smaller pharaohs. I mean, whether you call it Trump or Putin or Xi or
right.
Whatever it is, Putin, and they're all the same. But it was so clear that even with the miraculous levels of God intervention, I mean, it wasn't even like kind of interesting, a little miracle at the level of miracle that God performed. It only hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Ahab, constantly these leaders come along, and you think in the face of it they would change. They don't, because that is the nature of the ego. We all have ego, and when you see it writ large, we don't like it, but we all have it. So opportunity for each of us is, for me, I'm not telling what you should do. I'd never do that. But for me, it's okay, what shred of ego do I have left that I need to give over to the divine? Because I can't solve it, but I can find and ferret out what ego is left in me, what fear is left in me, and say, only when I turn over all that will I be given the understanding to help do whatever it is given me to do in this. And it's challenging, because it looks like, what could one person possibly do? Well, I mean, look at the Moses and the Jesuses and all the others. It's not that we're all of the same cloth, and all that we can do is, well, at one level, is inside in our traditions, in our own practice, turn over and then see, what does God want us to do? I am positive in my daily prayers that God does not want this injustice, imbalance, pain, and suffering. So what's given me to do is to send some funds to the various charitable organizations. I was at the iftar in your own mosque. while they were
Right.
sleeping, and they had to stop. All I can do is that, and engage, write letters for the moment. That is all that I can do. Make it, but I think God wants more of me. I'm very sure about that. God literally, if I've heard correctly, I hope so, wants me to say certain things to give a context to these times, to not be silent in the face of the suffering. And so I will write what the divine has given me to understand and share it, and see what happens when those thoughts come out. But I will not be silent in the face of this horror, injustice,
Yeah,
suffering.
very, very well said. And I think that what you have said about Pharaoh and about the fact now that we have the same situation, we have our own pharaohs, whether it is Xi or Putin or whoever else. Uh, and like Pharaoh in the past, they refused to acknowledge God. They refused to uh, give up power. And uh, it was not Moses who brought him down. It was God. Moses by themselves could not have parted the waters, So when will God do this? He will do this through? We don't know. As I said, it may be we may suffer for 40, 50 years. The second point that you have said is that you are only accountable to yourself. You and I are very small people to be able to take on anybody. And so we have to look to ourselves as to what we do. And we speak up, we raise our hands and say, this is not right, and this is what we are doing. Um, and appeal to the powerless to be patient and to trust in God. But while we are waiting, um, like Moses' flock, even the flock of Moses had a hard time. The moment Moses went up to the mountain, they started worshipping the calf, the golden calf. So we are we have been trained in the systems,
Yep.
and we can't give those up. We have to re-educate ourselves, and this is, I think, and I'm very happy. I mean, I will be very happy if you said I disagree with you completely and you're talking nonsense. But I wanted somebody.
There's not a lot of space between our thoughts and our hearts.
So viewers, we come to the end of this session of the series. I hope you liked it. If so, please like and share this video as much as possible. Please also subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you keep updated with the future episodes. I will encourage and appreciate your questions and comments on this video. Please write them in the comments box. You may also send your comments and questions by email. The email address is askkelly@alimakhtar.com. All this information is also mentioned in the description of this video. Till next time, have a wonderful and thoughtful time. Thank you.